This takes place in October 1977. When my mum was 16, she ran away from her abusive home along with her friend Lisa. They hitchhiked from Massachusetts all the way to California. Obviously, this wasn't the brightest of plans, but given my mum's tumultuous home life and past experiences, she didn't see how it could be much more dangerous than anything she'd already experienced. They had a pretty safe and uneventful trip across the country, finding friends in many truck drivers and other travelers. It wasn't until they'd reached California when this encounter happens. The Hillside Strangler, at first thought to be one assailant, ended up being two men who were caught and brought to justice for 10 murders. So, my mum and Lisa end up meeting these two guys who were super nice to them. They crashed at their place for a few days, partying, but nothing bad had come of it at this point. These guys tell the girls that they're going to take them to the Hollywood Hills and Sunset Boulevard to see the sights. Not being from the area, my mum had no idea that these areas were more crime-ridden at the time, especially considering they were supposed to be sightseeing. My mum really wanted to see where all the movie stars lived. These guys take my mum and her friend to some divey restaurant bar and get them super drunk. It's also the first time my mum is introduced to and tries cocaine. After these underage girls are now completely high and drunk, they split off in two pairs, and my mum's friend disappears with one of these guys. My mum is now hanging out with just one of her new guy friends. He then suggests that they stand on the sidewalk on Sunset Boulevard in the middle of the night, and when a car pulls up, she should get in and direct the driver to drive across the street to this dark parking lot. It isn't really until the first and only car pulls up and she gets in that she's realized this guy is prostituting her out. Keep in mind, these guys had been nothing but kind and respectful to my young mum and friend for the past few days. Also, and very sadly, this type of abuse is not a new concept for her either. She gets into this car and instead of pulling into the parking lot, he keeps driving straight. My mum explains that he's gone the wrong way, so he starts driving faster. My mum moves towards the door, but he locks it, hits her, and attempts to hold her down all at the same time. He tells her she isn't going anywhere. My mum knew in her head she needed to get out of the car, or she'd be dead. So, in one swift move, she unlocks the door, tucks, and rolls out of the car. His car comes to a screeching halt. She sees some bushes in front of a house, so she runs to hide behind them. He's turned around, looking for her, creeping along. His passenger's side was facing where she was hiding, and she was peeking through the bushes. She saw he had a gun. As soon as his car crept by, she ran to the backyard. It was all fenced in. There was no other way out, so she had to go back the way she came. By the time she crawled back into the bushes to see if he was still around, she saw his car had gone to the end of the road and turned back around. So he passes again, and when she thought he was far enough away, she crawled out of the bushes to run. But then she sees his brake lights. Confident that he's now seen her, she runs as fast as possible around a corner. But she could hear his car, so she had to duck and hide behind parked cars on the road. As soon as he passes again, she booked it across the street, which took her through the parking lot she was originally supposed to park in, and back to her friend. The creep did circle back again, but by then she was with her friend and they were leaving the area. My mum and her friend quickly ditched those two arseholes and did find a safer place to stay. But only a short time later did my mum call home and eventually made it home safely. It wasn't until a long time later that she saw on the news a story about a woman being murdered and recognized the murderer. Dubbed the Hillside Strangler, as the man who had picked her up that night.